Hello, everyone, and welcome to Any Button Gaming. As always, I'm your host, Jesse Georgie, and it's our first interview. It's Retro Week, and Dr. Kris Alexander, welcome back. How did you feel after playing Street Fighter? I know it's probably been a while since you played it at all, so how was it?
It was great. I really you reawakened the excitement engine inside of me. I'm like, yeah, let's get back into Street Fighter. So yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad. So, you're a professor at Ryerson University. You're a streamer. You're globally ranked in a couple of games, card games as well. And you're PhD, video games prof. So just a little shout out to you there. So I just want to start from the very beginning. So what was gaming like during your childhood? I mean, for me, it was the Game Boy and the PlayStation 2. And I feel like now gamers are starting at such a young age, like kids are learning now how to play mobile games before they learn how to walk. So it's true. So what was gaming like during your childhood? What did it look like?
So gaming for me, it included a lot of LCD liquid crystal display handheld games by Tiger Electronics, like Double Dragon and Ninja Turtles and Donkey Kong Jr. and Game and Watch. And this is how things started for me. And my very first console was the Atari 2600. Now, what's interesting about that is I got the Atari 2600 when the Nintendo came out, because in my family we couldn't afford the latest console. But when the Nintendo came out, people in our area who could afford the Nintendo were throwing away their Atari 2600s, and we were like, whoa, 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 hold up, we'll take those. And then we got a ton of games, and we were like, ooh, maybe it's all right to be one generation behind because it comes with all this. People don't want it anymore, and we could play. So I guess that started the entire career of me playing games, regardless of when they were released, but eventually being able to dig really deep into a ton of games. And now, like, if you were born and as soon as he came out, you could play with a controller, there is no way you could play all the video games that exist right now. But when I was growing up, in some ways it was possible. There were so few games you would be able to talk about, oh, did you hear about that? Yeah, yeah. But now people mention a game, like I'll say to you, have you heard of a game called Gorogoa? And they'll be like, what's Gorogoa? Exactly. You type in a search, yo, this game is awesome. And then you try it out. Right now, it's more about word of mouth and experience congruence than anything else. But yeah, that's the genesis of my connection to gaming.
I love that that's how you started it, because you're basically saying from inception, from your childhood, you've been a retro gamer, and it's perfect for Retro Week. Um, so to segue into that, what do you think it is overall that people find so appealing about retro games? Why does it have such a big market value? Why do so many people love playing old games when new games, like you said, continue to come out? There's so many that we can't even play them all.
Well, one of the big things has to do with, I guess, history lessons in some ways. But the bigger thing you'll see is when I grew up, it wasn't cool to call yourself a video game player. I had a lot of people making fun of me, suggesting that, oh, you're just another one of those gamers that play and stay in your parents' basement, which was true. But both of my parents were laid off, and I was at home working 3 jobs to help them pay their mortgage. So all that, those stories never come up. But at the same time, when you're looking at how video games in some ways have become more accessible and in some other ways in terms of difficulty have become easier to appeal to more people for return on investment's sake, people are trying to go back to retro to see how hard games used to actually be and be like, yo, I'm really going to struggle to get through this. And there's certain companies now that still preserve that, like From Software with the Dark Souls series and Demon Souls, where like it's not easy, but fan bases gravitate towards that, to even a shift in Nintendo as late as Super Mario 3D Land on the Nintendo DS, where after you would die a certain number of times, I can't remember, between 7 and 17, you would respawn invincible with a tanuki tail. I mean, a raccoon tail. Nintendo never used to do those things. But now we have this gaming that appeals to more people, which is a good thing. But sometimes appealing to more people takes priority over some artistic experiences. For example, I had mentioned the game Gorogoa. It's a one-player point-and-click adventure which incorporates beautiful tapestry and puzzles, and it was made by one individual and took them 6 years. We play that game as part of my class, and people are always blown away like, whoa, I didn't know video games could do this. And in my head, I'm like, yo, these are the types of games I grew up with. artistic, beautiful renditions of somebody else's vision that didn't have loot boxes, that didn't have hats to buy. So a lot of the return I see to retro gaming has to do with trying to figure out what games used to be like when we didn't have tutorial levels where you would design a game that taught you gradually how to get better at a game without an instruction manual, without a lighting up icon. These things, of course, they're moving the industry forward, particularly in terms of accessibility. But I think part of the draw is to find out how it used to be done, in my view.
Do you think any part of that is just kind of society today? Like everyone nowadays, because of our smartphones, because of things like TikTok, like you need something quick, you need it fast, instant gratification. So do you think a part of that is people, a lot of people nowadays, or maybe the newer generation of gamers, they're just kind of used to, you know, being able to quickly get through these levels, or they don't want to necessarily have that big of a challenge?
Well, I'm not sure what the intentions of many gamers are. A lot of time it's to enjoy, but I know that certain companies have investors that are looking for particular outcomes. And that's why you see strange things like in there's one NBA sports title where you can pay for a haircut, but you don't get to see the haircut until after you pay. That doesn't even happen in real life. That doesn't happen in real life. And there's no way that the makers of NBA 2K on the Sega Dreamcast, they weren't doing that. They weren't. And those were some of the most revolutionary sport games. But questions have to be asked about what type of organization would ask a human to pay for a haircut and not see it. I don't know whether or not it's been changed. I only read about this somewhere and I was like, how is this possible? But there's so many flavors of consumption right now that it's all muddled. You don't know. There are people that are looking for quick experiences. There are people that are looking for long-term experiences, but often the news doesn't specify, hey, this is one of these longer experiences that it takes you a while to get through. They're just talking about the quick stuff, the violent stuff, the Grand Theft Auto stuff. But nobody talks about how Grand Theft Auto, all those games have an incredible amount of statistical research and data behind the decisions in the game, for example.
Absolutely. Like as soon as you said like I'm guessing it was NBA 2K maybe was the game for the haircut. As soon as you said that, it just made me think of something that's been growing so much over the years is just microtransactions in general. We've seen tons of free games, just to speak as of lately, like something like Fall Guys, where the company is still able to make a bunch of money because people are spending money just for skins, stuff that doesn't affect the gameplay necessarily, but just so that they can, you know, have their own custom looked character. Do you think, you know, this free to play game with, you know, microtransactions in it is kind of the future of where gaming is going to go?
I think it is a future for certain gaming companies and where they need to go. For example, I talk about this quite a bit. And in fun fact, we actually spoke about microtransactions inside of my game design class this week. And we were talking about 7 different ways in which it often happens within video games. But we also spoke about how it's usually dependent on organization. For example, I don't know if you heard of a game called Untitled Goose Game.
I don't think so, no.
Absolutely incredible game. Core development team of 11 people, equally share in revenue together. The game is about you being a mischievous duck that can honk and grab items. And if you play this game and look at this game, you're like, yo, the developers love this idea of entertainment and education and engagement. And they're not doing things like, well, you know what? Next week, we're going to have a Fox DLC, and you can play the Untitled Goose Game as a Fox. That's not what they want to do. They're making a statement. And I think what you're seeing now is an increasing retroness, to make up a term, inside of the indie development community. Trying to go back to, you look at large corporations right now, companies that have been around for years. Well, if you look at the price of games, they haven't really fluctuated. And in fact, in some cases, they've gone down since when I was purchasing games. Do you know how much the original, there's no original, Super Mario Brothers 3 cost when it came out? $99.99. Think about that. That's, I don't even remember what year that was, so long ago. And people are like, oh, games are so expensive. I'm like, yo, I remember the Sega Dreamcast came out on October 9th, 1999, $99.99. How expensive it was then. And you can try and find a copy of a game like Cannon Spike for the Sega Dreamcast, and it's still going for retail price. Still, and in some cases, $129. Anyways, all this to say that microtransactions, in my view, are a future for certain companies who have certain responsibilities. And then now we're seeing more in the media, certain crunch philosophies I don't think it's in the entire video games industry. You even look at Capcom, they tried it too with a game that nobody wants to talk about, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, where they introduced this gem system where you could buy different gems that would level up your character. People went nuts. And then they made another faux pas where there were 4 characters that were supposed to be unlocked. You had to pay $29.99 for them. But then data miners found out that those characters were already on the disc and they were locked. And people were like, yo, what's going on right now? It's not the Capcom I grew up with. Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, I play as the worst character in the game. There was no outcrying, complaining for them to patch and buff Sean Matsuda. There was just like, yo, he's the worst character. Deal with it. So there are a lot of cultural shifts in video games, and I'm seeing now this push back to going to retro is like, yo, how did things used to be? How can we embody? You look at a game like Celeste, stringent gameplay. To me, that's an embodiment of retro gameplay. So yeah, you look like 20XX trying to go towards that Mega Man, going difficult, trying to figure things out on your own through trial and error and lots of death. You look at a game like Inside, like Limbo, these types of games where it's difficult, but you push through. Anyways, I shouldn't turn this into.
No, it's interesting you say that because like when you talked about like characters getting buffs or getting nerfed, like that happens so much nowadays. Like I'm a big Call of Duty Warzone player, and it's like sometimes literally multiple times a week that there's a gun that's gotten buffed or a gun that's gotten nerfed, or every week you look at streamers and they're using a different gun set because this gun got nerfed, this gun got buffed, and it's ridiculous because it's like every week the game is changing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like they don't want anybody to get good at a game anymore. There are research studies that have been looking and analyzing. I spoke about Slippy Netcode while we were chatting, while playing. The Slippy Netcode has almost perfected lagless online play for one of the most stringent, next to Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, fighting games of all time, Super Smash Bros. Melee. But you gotta ask the question on how community and fans are coming up with numerical solutions for lagless online play, and it's not coming from Nintendo. Well, the answer is they want more people to feel like professionals. And what you're seeing is the retro community wants to move further back towards where we were able to have specialists in games. And you don't get patched out of being awesome in a game. You're awesome at a game. And people come at you and it doesn't get patched out. The worst character remains the worst character. And if you really grind hard enough and learn the meta between different characters, you can still triumph. So these are all cultural shifts that we've seen over the years. And in some ways, we were talking about this in class, there's a culture of accepting unfinished software. When was the last time you purchased a game on a console that connected to the internet, you put it in after unwrapping it and didn't have to wait for a download? I say this in the classroom and students are like, oh my goodness. And there were some arguments like, oh, well, you have to understand that it's small bugs that sometimes need to get squished. I'm like, yo, I grew up in a time where you would take out a cartridge, put it in, and play. There was no waiting. But now that's an old man thing. You know what I mean? Like playing a game that you purchase right away, all right, is like an old man thing. They said in class there's one game that the update when they bought the game was 200 gigs. They're saying one game on the Switch required you to buy an extra SD after purchasing a game. I'm like, I'm definitely 70. When I hear these things, I'm like, yo, I'm old. Anyway.
No, it's interesting you say that because you say like when's the last time you purchased a game that didn't have to be downloaded, and like now a lot of it is like when's the last time you even purchased a game physically? Like I haven't bought one in years. But a question I wanted to ask you is you're globally ranked in both Third Strike and in Light Seekers. So for gamers, you know, there's a lot of players who aspire to be one of the best in the world. I'm just wondering for myself, like how much time goes into that kind of practice, like when you were playing actively, like a game like Street Fighter, to continue to stay at the top? Because I feel like it would be a lot, no?
So let me be clear. I discovered that I was 17th in the world on the PlayStation Network with the worst character in the game during my PhD in Montreal. And here's how it happened. I was never grinding to become globally ranked. I was playing this one individual, Spectra General, for 3 hours. And at the end of the 3 hours, he was like, dude, how come I'm higher up on the tier list than you and I can't take games off of you? And then I messaged back. I said, yo, there's rankings for this game? He was like, yeah, man, there's global rankings. Go check it out. And I checked, and I was 17th in the world, but convincingly beating the number 8 dude. And it was just a love for the game. I love Street Fighter. I'm not trying to level up in Street Fighter. Of course, now that's changed. I was just playing the game a lot. I didn't know. And then the whole thing with Light Seekers, it was the same thing. I noticed I just kept seeing the same two people I was playing over and over and beating. And I noticed it was this tab of like rankings, and I clicked on it. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm number one in Canada. And oh my gosh, I'm number one in the world with my class. I play games for their enjoyment, not for the grind, the hustle, the stress of being globally ranked in games. Like it's not how I grew up. We didn't have the internet to compare ourselves to other people. We just like playing the game. So that particular instance of me finding out about being globally ranked, it was all accidental. And to get back to your question about how much time, when I was globally ranked during my PhD, this is before I had kids, I was playing, between a minimum of 4 hours of video games every day. So maybe 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon. My girlfriend at the time, now wife, she was at work. Hey, yo, I'm playing games. So when I was playing regularly, especially back in the day training with the top 12 Necro, when I was in RTA, we were playing between 12 and 14 hours a day, man. But we'd obliterate our homework so that we could do that. You know what I mean? Like, and it was just for fun. This is where we went to talk about things. That's my guy, Daniel Singh, also a grad of RTA. We used to work in the cage. He used to work in the cage. I used to work in the cage at different times. And on breaks, we would play games. Like that's what we would do. And it wasn't a thing where we were, all right, I got to grind. I got to be the best. I'm just like, yo, let's hang out. Let's play games. Let's be in an arcade together. You know what I'm saying? So it's a long-winded answer to your question, but
I love that you said that you'd still obliterate your homework, because that's like growing up, that was like me. My parents were like, we don't care how much you play. As long as your homework's done, we don't have a problem with it. And I was like, okay, no worries.
that's the condition. Yo, let me obliterate. I'm playing games. He's only playing games because he's done. Man, he's completing his homework real quick. How are your marks, son? Check this. Oh, all right, you good. And once
Exactly.
you get off of the undergrad, they don't care about that. And especially if you pay for your own school, they're not asking you. Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. So this is basically just my last question to kind of segue from being globally ranked to the world of esports. Obviously, over the years, it has grown exponentially. And personally, I hate the argument of people like, it's a sport, it's not a sport. Because to me, it doesn't even matter if it is. It's its own thing, and it's where the money is going. That's where the market is. So in your opinion, obviously we've seen esports grow, but how much more do you think it's going to grow in the next couple of years, specifically in North America?
So I remember reading somewhere that the 2013 World of Warcraft Championship saw close to 18 times more viewers than any Super Bowl aired at the time. This is 2013, okay? I know that those numbers have increased, and I know that esports are not going to stop, because the way League of Legends, for example, that things are designed, you can watch a play in League of Legends and roughly 3 minutes later have the game installed on your machine and try out that same play. The difference between electronic sports, esports, and traditional sports is to be able to throw a football for so long is it's way more difficult than install and I could, I got this. So that's what you're seeing. It's only going to go up because many of us who watched traditional sports, and I wasn't one of those people, fun fact, they gravitated towards the players. They wanted to be like Mike, and they'd be out on the court training for a long time. But now you might want to be like Faker, and you watch Faker's replays and you watch what he does and you're like, yo, okay, let me try that. It's a lot different than standing at a free throw line, closing your eyes and taking a shot like Michael Jordan used to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what happens is entertainment and engagement usually comes from some kind of affinity with the team, your ability to see yourself in them. Video games afford us that opportunity because you'll see somebody playing a game and you might even just be flipping through Twitch and check a game and be like, yo, let me try this out. I remember there was a game called Cluster Truck that I saw on a stream one time. It was literally you standing on top of freight trucks, jumping and trying not to touch the ground. I saw this game. I was like, yo, this game looks incredible. And then I did some research to find out that it's one of the first games that allowed Twitch viewers that when they watched you play the game, they could select your next level for you. So they were experimenting with a next level of engagement. And that's the only thing, not the only thing, but one of the strengths that differentiate esports from traditional sports. When could you talk to your fellow player? When? Now, many of our favorite players in esports, they have streams on the weekend and they just talk to participants. Which football players, except for more recently, are up on stream talking to their fans? Because now they're going to have to change the rules of traditional sports to afford them the same opportunities that video games have afforded their fans to do with their favorite players. But the way that the monetization structures have worked in traditional sports, in my view, I think often prevent players from doing anything outside. But just imagine what would happen to the NBA if in the off season, NBA players could play as themselves and could stream to viewers. Are you joking me? If LeBron James could play as LeBron James and get beaten by a 13-year-old, and then if they defeated LeBron James, they could meet him or chat with him on stream. Do you have any idea how much more money LeBron James could make if that were a thing? And I don't know whether that is happening right now. I'm disconnected from that world. But these are things, you're seeing it with F1 racers. F1 racers at the time, you used to be able to, in VR, you would be mapped, the actual live race would be mapped into your virtual race. And if you ranked close to the victory, the person who achieved victory, you'd be able to meet them.
Wow.
Why isn't this happening for everything? How? You know what I mean? This is the kind of stuff that video games could afford us. There's one driver, I can't remember his name. He was one of the top online racers. They took him and put him in he's a real race car driver now because it's the same physics. Save G-force, it's the same physics. So anyway, long-winded answer to your question. I think esports are here to stay. I think what you're finding is the only people complaining about the name are people that aren't yet able to financially benefit from it. It's the same thing with Napster. It was the same thing with YouTube. It was the same thing with, what else was there? Think about people trying to take down Napster and what's on YouTube right now. Huh? How did that happen to Napster? Look what's on YouTube right now. You know what I'm saying? So overwhelmingly, I think the people complaining about esports are people that are non-endemic to the space and are trying to figure out how to capitalize on the community. And community members can sniff that out from a mile away. It's going to be grassrooted out. And we don't know what kind of esports are coming in the future. You can see that Nintendo has solved the issue of sedentary video game play with games like Ring Fit Adventure, which is an actual physical game. You can't progress without doing physical fitness. If we started having esports of physical games and Nintendo piloted that kind of thing, it'd be over. We're not there yet as a society.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't have put it better myself. I think you hit the nail. Like, it was perfect, exactly how you explained it. Before I want to let you go, I had one last question, very, very quick. What is your all-time favorite gaming moment? Like, what point in your life did you enjoy gaming the most?
Wow.
I know it's a tough one. I'm putting you on the spot.
No, it's not difficult. The greatest time of my life for video games is when I was admitted to York University after being rejected from the RTA School of Media the first time. And I think 2 weeks in, they went on strike for 11 weeks. And in that time, I just scrounged together for my 3 jobs to purchase the internet. And I was at home with the Sega Dreamcast. And there was no curriculum, nothing. I just played games. The Sega Dreamcast is like the console that transformed my life because it was kind of the situation where I'd have to watch the news in the morning to see if I was going back to school. And for 11 weeks, I wasn't. And video games. Video
Absolutely.
games and job at the nighttime. So that to me, and I had friends at the time, Dan was one of them, where there was like, this guy playing that Dreamcast. The Sega Dreamcast was ahead of its time. And unfortunately, it didn't pan out the way that Sega wanted it to, but Sega had so many things that you're seeing right now trending, like asynchronous gameplay, where you would take out the memory card and play with it on the go. The little Tamagotchi egg thing, they were called Chows in Sonic Adventure. You play all day with it, bring it home, and then it would show up in the game. That's what we're doing with the Switch right now. One of the first consoles with internet connectivity. One of the first consoles that had a disk size that exceeded 700 megabytes. Revolutionary system, ahead of its time. Phantasy Star Online, for example. So yeah, that was the console that changed me. And that was also the console where I first played Street Fighter 3. So that's
I love it. There's nothing.
If you want to get even more hardcore, the motherboard on the Sega Dreamcast is called the Naomi board, and that's my wife's name. Oh my goodness.
It was written in the stars. Well, that's all the time we have, Kris. I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. That was great. I honestly learned so much. And yeah, so to everyone watching, Don't forget to tune in to our video on Monday. It's another week, a bunch of content on the way. Dr. Kris Alexander, thank you once again. Thank you so much.
You take good care.